In early 2026, Princess Anne quietly pulled off the most ruthless power move Buckingham Palace has seen in decades. She systematically erased 5 Parker Bowles names from the official royal records. And the part that should make your blood run cold isn't even that she did it. It's that King Charles secretly gave her his personal approval to pull the trigger. Think about what that actually means. A reigning monarch just sanctioned a quiet, institutional execution against his own wife's family. A husband signed off on stripping the Queen Consort's children of their standing, their access, and their footprint inside the palace walls. There was no press release, no public announcement, no official statement issued to newsrooms, just 5 names that were suddenly gone from the rosters where they had comfortably sat for over 20 years. The royal correspondents, palace watchers, and auditors who track household registries for a living noticed the absence immediately. They started making frantic calls to their contacts inside the household. But what came back wasn't a denial. It wasn't an explanation. It was pure, unbroken silence. And inside the walls of Buckingham Palace, silence is never an accident. It's a weapon. Before we uncover why this brutal purge happened, and how Charles justified doing it behind Camilla's back, do yourself a favor. Subscribe right now so you don't miss a single piece of this unfolding palace fallout. So, who actually got wiped from the books? Let's be specific, because every single name on that list carries immense weight. Tom Parker Bowles is the most visible target. Camilla's son, food writer, television personality. For years, he built a lucrative career in the public eye. But that success was quietly fueled by proximity, the VIP access, the unvetted security clearances, the invitation to rooms that regular citizens never see. That access was tied directly to his mother's position. In a single morning, that entire foundation was pulled out from under him. Then there's Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter. Lower profile, but deeply embedded. She relied on the quiet, institutional goodwill of the palace. That goodwill just hit a brick wall, and the boundary lines were redrawn without her getting a single word of warning. Along with Tom and Laura, 3 more names tied to the wider Parker Bowles network lost their footing. Soft appointments, patronages, ceremonial passkey clearances. The kind of perks nobody tracks until they're stripped away. These lists don't edit themselves. Someone had to review the names. Someone had to weigh the brutal optics. Someone had to make the ultimate call. Princess Anne proposed the purge, and King Charles approved it. Hi viewers, do you think a person should always stand by their spouse's family no matter what? Or does duty to your lifetime work come first? Type spouse or type duty in the comments below right now. That approval should stop you in your tracks. Anne doesn't meddle in palace housekeeping unless the survival of the institution is on the line. She spent 50 years as the hardest working royal alive by staying in her lane and doing the job. When Anne moves, it means the ground beneath the monarchy is shifting. And when Charles sanctions action against his own wife's family, it means a dangerous game is being played behind closed doors. To understand how this nightmare built up, you have to look back to 1977. That was the year Princess Anne made a decision that shocked the traditionalists. When her children, Peter Phillips and Zara Tindall, were born, Anne flatly refused royal titles for them. No civil list money, no palace payroll, no trading on crown adjacency. She set a standard for her own blood. If you don't do the work, you don't take from the crown. Peter works in sports management. Zara is an Olympic equestrian. Neither of them uses the monarchy as a financial crutch. For 20 years, Anne watched Camilla's family do the exact opposite. Ever since Charles and Camilla married in April 2005, A quiet normalization process took place. Slowly, Tom and Laura became fixtures. They weren't working royals, but they were present. They were embedded. They enjoyed the perks without ever taking the oath. Anne saw it all. She held her tongue. She waited. Anne is never impulsive. She waits until the exact moment the political climate guarantees her strike will succeed. That moment arrived in early 2026. Prince Andrew's arrest in February had pushed the entire institution into a defensive crisis. Public outrage over royal entitlement and nepotism was at a boiling point. The palace desperately needed to prove it was clean, modern, and accountable. Anne saw her opening. She wasn't settling a petty score. She was enforcing the exact same ruthless standard on Camilla's children that she had enforced on her own. She walked into Charles's private study with a thin red ledger. Camilla wasn't in the room. Camilla had no idea her husband was even meeting with his sister. Anne laid the paperwork down. No dramatic speeches, just facts, institutional risk, and the names of the 5 Parker Bowles family members. Charles looked at the list. He knew signing meant launching a nuclear strike on his own marriage. He picked up the pen and signed his name anyway. The researchers tracking the royal roster expected a public denial from the palace. But what came back was complete, deliberate silence. A silence that concealed a far deeper betrayal. Anne had quietly drawn a line for her own children decades ago, but nobody in Queen Camilla's inner circle realized she was about to apply that exact same ruthless standard to them. When royal auditors cross-referenced the updated 2026 household lists, they made an alarming discovery. The order to erase the Queen Consort's family hadn't been leaked by an enemy. It had been delivered with the direct, signed backing of the sovereign himself. On February 14, 2026, at precisely 9:15 a.m., an official administrative review moved through the corridors of the Lord Chamberlain's office. It was registered under code 2026/02-B, officially titled the Sovereign Grant Audit and Royal Household Access Review. On the surface, the document looked completely routine. It was presented to staff as a standard administrative review, a periodic realignment of palace access codes, security passkeys, and unbacked patronages across the royal estate. The stated justification was simple and unassailable: fiscal streamlining, security tier modernization, and institutional accountability. In the turbulent aftermath of Prince Andrew's February legal fallout, no one questioned the need for a thorough audit. The palace press machinery had spent weeks reassuring the public that the monarchy was tightening its belt and cutting unnecessary excess. So when audit teams began reviewing registries, household staff assumed it was just another round of damage control directed at the Duke of York's lingering perimeter. They were wrong. Buried deep on page 14 of that review was a single procedural clause that had nothing to do with Prince Andrew. It outlined a sweeping overhaul of unearned access passes, specifically targeting non-working relatives who maintained soft appointments and VIP access without a direct, formal constitutional function. The clause systematically re-evaluated the exact status of Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, along with 3 key figures tied to the wider Parker Bowles network. For 2 decades, those 5 individuals had moved through the royal ecosystem with seamless ease. They held special access clearance at palace gates. Their names sat on administrative lists for private events, royal enclosures, and advisory roles connected to royal trusts. They did not draw formal salaries from the civil list, but they enjoyed something far more valuable: the unwritten, unquestioned authority of royal proximity. Document 2026/02-B reopened that entire settled arrangement. It subjected 20 years of informal access to cold, bureaucratic scrutiny. Every pass was cross-referenced against historical precedent. Every soft appointment was checked for written authorization, and as auditors worked through the ledgers, a quiet realization began to spread among senior clerks. This was not a routine cleanup of leftover administrative clutter. This was a targeted, systematic dismantling of an entire network's institutional standing. The paperwork had been constructed so carefully and framed so neutrally that it appeared completely unassailable on paper. It carried no inflammatory language, no personal grievances, and no explicit mentions of family friction. It operated purely through procedural mechanics, making it look like a mandatory administrative update rather than a deliberate political strike. What made the strategy so effective was its calculated timing and absolute stealth. Queen Camilla's personal advisors were entirely focused on the outer perimeter. They were closely tracking Prince William's moves, managing public relations surrounding the king's ongoing health treatments, and monitoring media reactions to the broader royal scandals. They were watching for threats from the usual directions. They expected pressure from parliamentary committees, hostile tabloid coverage, or direct policy shifts driven by the Prince of Wales. They did not expect a procedural audit originating from the Sovereign Household Registry. They did not watch the administrative ledgers where Princess Anne quietly operates, while the Queen Consort's team remained distracted by high-profile public relations management. Document 2026/02-B moved steadily through the internal approval pipeline. It collected necessary administrative stamps. It passed through legal reviews. It cleared security panels. Step by step, the paper trail was laid down, creating an irreversible administrative reality before a single conversation was ever held with the people affected. The audit transformed an informal arrangement built on personal relationships into a hard record of compliance and authorization. And under that strict standard, the Parker Bowles network had no institutional defense. They held no formal constitutional mandate. They had no official state duties. They existed inside the palace walls, entirely on the basis of royal adjacency, and document 2026/02-B was explicitly written to eliminate unearned adjacency altogether. By the time the final pages of the audit were assembled for executive signature, the trap had already closed. The structure was complete, the legal framework was solid, and the procedural justification was airtight. The only element remaining was the formal sign-off that would convert the audit from a theoretical recommendation into an absolute institutional command. On the surface, document 2026/02-B looked like boring financial housekeeping, but buried on page 14 was a single clause that stripped 5 VIP access codes permanently. Camilla's aides assumed the audit was aimed entirely at stripping Prince Andrew's remaining privileges, completely unaware that the trap was actually closing on her own children. As the paperwork moved quietly through the Lord Chamberlain's office, one senior aide realized the terrifying reality. Queen Camilla was completely blind to the strike because she was watching Prince William, never suspecting the attack was coming from Princess Anne. The implementation of document 2026/02-B did not happen with a dramatic announcement or a sudden confrontation. It unfolded as a series of quiet, incremental, and individually deniable incidents designed to strip access without provoking an immediate public crisis. The first incident occurred at the north gate of Buckingham Palace. For years, Tom Parker Bowles had held an elevated security passkey, a courtesy clearance that allowed his vehicle to enter palace grounds without the standard security vetting applied to visitors. In late February 2026, during a routine approach to the gate, the automated scanner flagged his clearance as inactive. Security officers politely informed him that his pass was subject to a standard system update and required reauthorization. It seemed like a minor technical glitch, an annoying administrative oversight easily corrected with a quick call to the household controller. But when his office called to resolve the issue, the call was routed to an administrative dead end. No one denied the clearance outright, they simply deferred it, citing ongoing security tier adjustments under the new audit protocols. Days later, the second incident hit Laura Lopes. For years, her name had appeared on internal advisory lists for the Royal Collection Trust, a soft appointment that carried no public profile but grants significant social prestige and internal influence. When the agenda for the upcoming spring committee meeting was distributed, her name was missing from the roster of attendees. When an inquiry was made regarding the omission, the secretarial response was polite, brief, and entirely procedural. The committee was undergoing a structural consolidation to align with the streamlined operational mandate established by active working royals. Her position had not been revoked in a dramatic fashion. It had simply been retired as part of an institutional review. It was clean, quiet, and completely deniable. Then came the third strike, a subtle shift in protocol at the Duchy of Cornwall estate offices. Certain advisory pass keys and courtesy privileges tied to the broader Parker Bowles network were systematically updated. Invitations to private state functions were quietly rerouted through standard public liaison channels rather than direct household passes. Access to private palace communications networks was quietly restricted. Taken individually, each event could be explained away as a routine administrative adjustment, a misunderstanding, or a temporary delay caused by ongoing modernization. But taken together, they formed an undeniable pattern of systemic exclusion. This multi-stage pressure campaign exposed a stark double standard that had quietly persisted inside the royal household for over 20 years. On one side stood Princess Anne's children, Peter Phillips and Zara Tyndall. From the moment of their birth, they had complied fully with the strictest interpretation of institutional rules. They held no titles, received no civil list funding, held no official access passes, and drew zero financial benefit from Crown assets. They built completely independent careers in sports management and equestrian athletics, accepting full responsibility for their public profiles and private livelihoods. They respected the boundary between public duty and private privilege because their mother had enforced that boundary with absolute consistency. On the other side sat the Parker Bowles network. For 2 decades, they had enjoyed the benefits of royal adjacency without fulfilling any of the corresponding public obligations. They moved through royal spaces, accessed duchy-backed resources, and leveraged the prestige of the monarchy to enhance their private standing, all while remaining exempt from the scrutiny, duty, and financial independence required of others. The neutral administrative records of the Duchy of Cornwall and the Sovereign Household Access Registers confirmed the reality of this double standard. For 20 years, one set of rules had applied to the blood relatives of the Princess Royal, while an entirely different set of rules had been created for the extended family of the Queen Consort. The midpoint reveal of the audit made the true motive crystal clear. This was never about administrative efficiency or minor security updates. It was about absolute institutional survival. In the wake of intense public scrutiny over royal privilege, the monarchy could no longer afford to shelter unearned access. Princess Anne and Prince William recognized that every unvetted pass, every soft appointment, and every unearned privilege was a potential liability waiting to detonate in the press. The purge was designed to eliminate soft targets before external critics could use them to compromise the crown's standing. Before we reveal the confrontation where Charles's secret approval was exposed, I want to hear from you. Comment Anne if you think Princess Anne was completely right to enforce strict equality. Comment Camilla if you think this was an unfair personal strike against the Queen's family. Comment Charles if you believe the king betrayed his wife to save his own legacy. One by one, invitations to private state dinners were rerouted, and doors that had swung open for 20 years quietly locked without a single raised voice. While Peter Phillips was forced to sign commercial contracts in sports management with zero royal backing, the Parker Bowles network was enjoying quiet access to duchy accounts. When Queen Camilla finally noticed her son's name missing from the Ascot VIP protocol list, she marched toward the king's private study to demand an immediate correction, unaware that the man who had authorized the strike was sitting right behind the desk. The confrontation did not take place in a crowded hallway or during an open household briefing. It happened behind the heavy oak doors of the sovereign's private sitting room. Queen Camilla walked into the room holding a printed copy of the updated Ascot VIP protocol list, her voice controlled but sharp. She viewed the systemic omission of her children's names not merely as a bureaucratic error, but as a direct personal insult. She had navigated 20 years of relentless public hostility, rebuilt her standing from the ground up, and earned her place alongside the king. To see her family quietly excised from the institutional ledger felt like a deliberate attempt to undermine her standing inside the palace walls. She demanded an immediate explanation, expecting to confront an overzealous mid-level administrative clerk who had misread the guidelines. Instead, she found Princess Anne sitting quietly near the desk, holding the master copy of document 2026/02-B. The atmosphere in the room turned instantly cold. There was no shouting, no explosive outburst, and no dramatic display of anger. That is not how senior royals settle internal disputes. Princess Anne did not flinch. She remained entirely calm, her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. When Camilla raised the issue of her family's exclusion, Anne set the red leather folder on the mahogany table between them. She spoke with a measured, deliberate clarity that carried the full weight of her 50 years of service. She made it clear that this was not about personal feelings, private grudges, or family friction. This was about the survival and integrity of the crown. Anne reminded her that Peter Phillips and Zara Tindall had lived their entire lives without royal titles, civil list allowances, or official access passes. They had earned their independent standings through hard work, without using the monarchy as a personal platform. If the Queen Consort's family expected to enjoy the prestige of the institution, they would have to be bound by the exact same standards. Then came the leverage reveal that changed everything. Camilla assumed that Anne was acting independently, pushing a rogue agenda or operating purely under pressure from Prince William. She threatened to take the matter directly to the king to have the order overturned. In response, Princess Anne simply turned to the final signature page of the audit document. There, at the bottom of the page beneath the official seal of the Lord Chamberlain, was the distinct, handwritten signature of King Charles III. The king had signed the document 3 days earlier, in complete privacy. He had not mentioned it over dinner. He had not raised it during their private conversations. He had quietly given his sister his full, explicit authority to carry out the purge. The stopping line fell with absolute finality. Anne looked directly at Camilla and delivered a hard truth. If the Crown's standard isn't worth the paper it's written on for your children today, Charles's legacy won't be worth anything tomorrow. To understand why King Charles made this choice, you have to look at the severe reality of his position. At 76 years old, navigating active cancer treatments while managing a monarchy under intense public scrutiny, Charles views decisions through the lens of legacy. He loves his wife deeply. He fought for decades to secure her place beside him, but he separates his personal affection for Camilla from his constitutional duty to the Crown. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes are not the Queen consort. Their presence on official rosters was an unearned luxury the institution could no longer defend. Driven by Prince William's clear vision for a modernized, streamlined monarchy, Charles realized that cleaning up loose ends was essential for his son's future. He let Anne act as the executioner because it provided total political cover. It framed the purge as institutional housekeeping rather than a personal domestic dispute. Camilla demanded to know who dared alter the official rosters behind her back, expecting a mid-level staffer to take the blame. When Princess Anne slipped the red folder across the mahogany desk, Camilla didn't look at Anne's signature. She looked at the bottom of the page, where her husband's private handwriting sat in black ink. Camilla turned to Charles, waiting for him to deny it, but the king remained absolutely silent. And in the royal court, silence is the final, irreversible judgment. The ripple effects of that silent decision spread quickly through the institution, creating a cascade of undramatized but permanent consequences. The following week, Tom Parker Bowles published a routine restaurant review in a major publication. His prose was cheerful, professional, and completely composed. He made no public mention of the audit, offered no quotes to friendly journalists, and initiated no media counteroffensive. Publicly, it appeared as though nothing had happened, but behind the scenes, the change was absolute. The phone calls that used to be returned in minutes were now routed through standard press offices. The unvetted security access at palace gates remained permanently disabled. The quiet infrastructure of royal adjacency had vanished. Laura Lopes stepped back completely from internal advisory circles connected to the Royal Collection Trust. Her absence at subsequent organizational meetings was treated as a settled administrative fact. Furthermore, the historic removal of Camilla's sister, Annabel Elliot, from the Duchy of Cornwall payroll under Prince William was reinforced as permanent operational policy. The message sent to the wider network was unmistakable. Proximity to the Queen consort would no longer guarantee a place within the financial or administrative machinery of the royal estate. Inside the household, the relationship dynamics shifted into a cold, highly professional distance. At public state engagements in early March, King Charles and Queen Camilla appeared entirely unified, standing side by side before the cameras with practiced composure. They performed their duties with absolute discipline, but behind closed doors, the political landscape had been altered. Kate Middleton's role as a key co-strategist alongside Prince William solidified even further. Her massive public support and disciplined focus on institutional modernization gave her significant internal weight. As Kate and William moved closer to the absolute center of palace authority, Camilla's personal influence was pushed further to the periphery. Her inner circle had shrunk to its tightest point in 20 years. The formal resolution was logged permanently under Executive Order 2026A, Royal Roster Cleanse and Access Protocol. The 5 Parker Bowles names were officially removed from the Sovereign Household Registry. What the public saw was a modernized, streamlined royal family, presenting an image of fiscal restraint and accountability. What insiders privately understood was that an entire era of informal access had been brought to a sudden, permanent end. The records were updated, the ledgers were sealed, and on paper, the crown was secure, even if the room remained entirely cold. Institutions do not survive on personal affection or sentimentality. They survive on cold, unyielding rules. Princess Anne proved once again that when the stability of the monarchy is threatened, unearned privilege will always be sacrificed. Proximity without purpose is an illusion, and inside Buckingham Palace, that illusion has finally been shattered. Did King Charles do the right thing by putting his legacy above his wife's family, or did Anne go too far? If this deep breakdown gave you clarity on how power really operates behind closed doors, hit the like button right now. Share this video with anyone who follows royal news, and subscribe to Crown Watch for the most accurate palace analysis available. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I read every single one. Tom Parker Bowles continued writing his food columns as if nothing had happened, but behind the scenes, the high-level invitations simply stopped arriving. While the public saw a united royal family on the balcony, behind the palace doors, the Parker Bowles era had been dismantled in a single morning. As the sovereign grant ledger was locked back into the palace vault, one chilling question lingered through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. Now that the Parker Bowles names are gone, whose name is next on Anne and William's list? And you cannot afford to miss what comes next. In our very next investigation, we expose a confidential memorandum leaked directly from Prince William's private office, dated July 12, 2026. It contains a secret list of 3 additional extended royal family members who are slated to lose their grace and favor residences by the end of this year, and one of those names belongs to a senior royal who currently believes their position is completely untouchable. Stay tuned, because that revelation is going to change everything you thought you knew about the future of the British monarchy.